Bridesmaid picked her wedding date 6 days before mine, leaving me questioning our friendship and considering cutting her off. I'm 29 and I have this friend, she's 30, who just did something I still can't fully process. I should start by saying that her boyfriend, my fiancé, and I all went to the same university. We weren't really close back then, but things changed fast. The four of us ended up working abroad in the same city, and over the last 2 years, we became really close. When I say close, I mean we'd see each other almost every week, sharing dinners, laughs, and those little adventures that make friendships real. Last June, my fiancé proposed. Of course I was over the moon, and we jumped right in: date, venue, the major stuff, all booked within the same month. The thing is, as soon as we locked everything in, I announced the date to our friend group. I wanted to give them a ton of notice so they could plan ahead. I shared every last detail with this friend. I even confided in her about things I was nervous about, and she didn't hesitate to jokingly appoint herself as a bridesmaid, which I'd honestly been planning myself. 4 months went by, and then she got engaged. I was absolutely thrilled for her, ready to dive into dresses and stories and planning together. But then she hit me with a shocker a month ago. They picked their wedding date, and it's 6 days before ours. 6 days. We're having our ceremonies in the same city, which happens to be 4 hours away from the metro, our old home base, where most of our mutual friends live. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her directly how did she settle on that date, knowing how close it was to mine? Didn't she realize how much this would affect our shared friends, let alone me? I told her right away that I might not even make it to her wedding, with mine being a week later. I'd be drowning in last-minute details. I have no wedding coordinator, I live abroad, and I only secured a work leave for 3 weeks. That's all I could get. There's a mountain of things I'll need to manage as soon as I land. Her response? I shrug in a simple, it's okay. I understand. She walked out of my room as if she'd just told me the weather forecast, not something that impacts me so much. I can't lie, it hurt. I'm still hurting. It feels like she doesn't care whether I'm even at her wedding or not. Part of me wants to strike her from my bridesmaids list altogether. Maybe that's pay, but I can't help but think about it. I haven't talked to her about any of this. I just feel so let down. Maybe she really can pick any date she wants, and maybe I am being overly sensitive. I know I should try to let it go. But I wish she'd at least tried to consider me or the friends we share. I keep asking myself, am I a bad person for feeling this way? And, if I decide to remove her as a bridesmaid, how do I even start that conversation? If I open up about how I feel, I have this sinking fear she'll turn it all around on me, painting herself as the victim and making me out to be the one overreacting. I just don't know what to do. According to her, I was just too emotional, a personality thing, she said, as if I was overreacting to everything. She really wanted me as part of her entourage and seemed to think that 6 days were enough between our weddings. I told her it's a lot easier to think that when your wedding is at the start of the week, not the end, and when you're the one asking people to drop everything and help you. And her fiancé even asked 3 days out of my fiancé's time, so they definitely understood how much prep it really takes. After that talk, it hit me that our emotional intelligence just didn't match up. I would never be so thoughtless towards someone I called a close friend. So, we both quietly agreed we wouldn't be at each other's weddings, but we'd still support one another as fellow brides. I suggested some suppliers I'd found, she did the same for me, and that was it. After that, I took a step back from the friendship completely. We went back to being acquaintances. I've never had a friend who could be so oblivious. I started focusing on my real friends, but honestly, there's still this lingering sadness over how things turned out. Update 2. Short update, they had a wine night with our friends and told them their side of the story. I honestly have no idea what they actually said, but I do know that he cried and that they were hurt we didn't invite them to our wedding. I've gone back and forth so many times about whether or not to invite them, wrestling with this constant feeling of guilt. But whenever I try to picture seeing my friend at my own wedding, my mind just flashes back to everything that went wrong, right back to the worst phase, when all this drama erupted. That stress just clings to me, and I know it would hang over every part of the day. This whole issue completely tainted any excitement I had about planning our wedding. It has made the process feel heavy and exhausting rather than joyful. That's the real reason why I decided to disinvite them. Update 3. I just need to let this out. I feel really insecure about my weight, and our wedding is only 2 weeks away. It's been a tough year, not just with wedding planning, but with drama involving another couple we know. About a year ago, things got tense between us and this other couple over wedding-related issues. We honestly tried our best to smooth everything out so there wouldn't be any bad energy on our actual wedding day. But then one of their guy friends started badmouthing me, And somehow those rumors and stories eventually reached me. At first, I thought I didn't care, but I couldn't just ignore it when I realized what was being spread about me. I ended up making a comment about this gossipy guy friend. Predictably, he ran to my partner and asked about it, probably hoping to stir up even more trouble. Then, one of our mutual friends actually confronted him and called him out for spreading these stories about me. Funny enough, after all that, things seemed to calm down and we all ended up in the same friend circles again. I decided I had nothing against anyone and just wanted to move forward. But recently, things flared up again. I happened to run into that same guy friend at the mall. A few hours later, I saw he'd posted an Instagram story that said something like, "Don't talk shit about me if you're overweight." It felt like a punch in the gut. I just knew he was talking about me. He even deleted the story right after my sister messaged him and asked if he was referring to someone specific. This guy isn't even my friend, and I have zero interest in having any connection with him, but his words hit me hard. Now, I feel so much less confident about myself and my weight. I'm at my highest weight ever right now. I've tried hard to lose weight over the past year, managed to shed 90, but I'm nowhere near my ideal. My confidence is at an all-time low and I don't know what to do. Update 4. It's been a year, and I wanted to share an update on everything that's happened. First off, my partner and I got married. So much has happened this past year, and when I think back to how it all unfolded, it really started with that one-on-one talk I had with the other bride. Let's just say, things got pretty heated and awkward after that conversation. Despite the tension, my partner and I put a lot of effort into trying to patch things up with the other couple for the sake of our larger friend group. We kept pushing for sit-down talks to clear the air and eliminate misunderstandings, doing what we could to make everyone comfortable again. But as things went on, a new problem emerged. This engaged couple started inviting our other friends to get-togethers without us. Basically, we were being excluded from our own group of friends. It stung, but honestly, we were so wrapped up in wedding planning and errands that we barely had time to socialize anyway, so I tried not to dwell on it. Leading up to the wedding, I really made an effort to sort things out before our trip back to our home country. Both couples were invited to each other at weddings. I declined their invite, knowing I'd be too busy. They RSVP'd 2 hours but cancelled at the last minute, apparently because of a family trip. That was disappointing, but the final straw came a week before our wedding. I heard a story that had been making the rounds within our batchmates. Apparently I was being painted as frantic and pissed because they were copying us. My friend told me they heard this from someone close to the other groom. When I confronted him, he flat out denied it had come from him. It didn't stop there. His group of friends started talking crap about me, and it escalated to the point where after I bumped into one of them in my neighborhood, this person posted a story online mocking me, implying I had no right to speak because I'm overweight. He didn't name me, but the timing was no coincidence. That was the breaking point for me. I cut them all off, and I've kept it that way because the whole thing became way too toxic. My husband and I have found peace with that decision. But there's still something bothering me. We have a couple of mutual friends here abroad, 2 people I've been close with since high school. I was actually the one who introduced the other couple to them when they moved here. Now, it feels awkward. Knowing they hang out with each other some days, and then all of a sudden it's our turn to see them on another day. It doesn't feel great, and I feel stuck about what to do. I want to be clear, I don't expect my friends to choose sides, and I'm not mad that they're still friends with the other couple. That's not my issue. It's just hard, watching these dynamics play out and trying to figure out how to navigate it all. What should I do? Update 5. Last month was our first anniversary, and we kept it small, just a quiet dinner and a cake in our apartment, nothing performative. A few days after, one of my 2 high school friends here asked if we could all do a low-key park picnic the next weekend. She said she was tired of picking turns and wanted everyone to be in the same place once without walking on eggshells. I told her I could handle civil. I meant it. We showed up with a blanket and a sensible amount of food. 15 minutes in, I saw them walking up, her in a sundress, him balancing a tray of mango float like a peace offering. My stomach did the drop it does when I'm about to see someone I practice seeing. They waved like we were normal, like the last year hadn't been a minefield. My friend shot me a look that said please, and I nodded. Civil. For a while, it was almost boring. He asked my husband about work, she complimented the tiny pressed flowers on our anniversary cake topper. At one point, she pointed at the Bluetooth speaker and laughed. Hey, this was on our playlist, when an old Ban and Ben song came on. I said, same, and left it there. I really thought we were going to get away with a nice, shallow couple of hours. Then the small world did its thing. A woman I didn't recognize approached with a little plastic container of suman and said my name like she'd practiced forming it right. She hugged me before I could process it. Mam's mom, she said, my old friend's mother. She was thinner than in photos I'd seen, a scarf wound around her head. She smiled at my husband, at me, and then at her daughter in that way moms do, just drinking her in. She told us she'd been in and out of our city for treatment since last year and that she'd actually met my high school friend a few weeks before at church. I watched my friend freeze, eyes darting to her fiancé. Her mom squeezed my hand and, in the sweetest, most casual tone, said, "I've always wanted to thank you. These two were frantic last year about fitting everything in before my next cycle. We really pushed for that week so I could travel while I felt strong. I told her to tell you, Anak." She looked between us. She was stubborn. It felt like someone had pulled a thread and all the tight parts of me loosened just enough for me to breathe. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. That one detail could have changed everything, and instead, here we were, held together by polite paper and so much guessing. We ended up walking to the other side of the field, just the two of us, while the others pretended to keep chatting. She admitted it, finally. Her mom got her diagnosis, they were juggling visa dates and an oncologist schedule. A pastor she wanted could only do that week. She said she kept it to herself because she didn't want pity and because she felt stupid that she'd laughed off my concerns when it all started. She said the silence became this heavy thing she didn't know how to lift. I was defensive, she said. I was proud. I thought if I just powered through, it would pass. Then she said the thing that hurt and helped at the same time, that the bullshit about me being too emotional was the story she hid behind to make her choices feel less selfish. She didn't cry. Her voice just cracked in the middle of a sentence and she bit it back. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "Not for wanting a wedding when I wanted it, for how I handled you." I told her I was sorry I didn't have the capacity to give her the benefit of the doubt when I was drowning too. And then I told her the rest about the stories, the mocking, the way it followed me into dressing rooms and Instagram. She swore up and down she didn't say those things and then stopped, like she realized how pointless a denial would sound to me now. After that, my high school friend did something I did not expect. She pulled me aside and handed me her phone. "I need you to see why we've been weird," she said. The screen showed a group chat I wasn't in. There were names I recognized and one I didn't. The chat title made my stomach flip, 147 damage control. The pain messages were from a year ago. There was my name, and the words copying, frantic, and then a stupid joke about weight that the guy from the mall had sent. I scrolled and saw him again, screenshotting my weighing stories and picking apart my dress, our aisle song, my arms. There were photos of my husband and me at a restaurant and a message from the other groom making a comment that was both smug and mean in a way that made me suddenly, sharply protective of the life we've built. My old friend wasn't in there. Her fiancé was. I don't think I've ever had anger leave my body that fast. It was like someone opened a window and all of it went straight out. I passed the phone back and told my friend she didn't owe me that, but I was glad to finally have the shape of this thing. Knowing it had a name made me feel less haunted by it. The rest happened quickly. My husband confronted him. He denied and then admitted and then said it was just banter. My old friend was white as paper. Her mom had gone home. The two guys started to square up and the park guard did that officious clap from across the grass, and we all sat down again, like we were in detention. That night, she sent me a message I didn't reply to right away. It was long. She owned the date. She owned the way she'd handled me. She didn't make excuses for the chat, she just said she hadn't known about it and that she and her fiancé were going to talk to a counselor. She told me her mom had one more round left and that she's been helping her shave the last of her hair in the shower. "I miss what we were before we were brides," she wrote. I stared at that sentence for a long time. I wrote back the next morning. I told her I was happy her mom was getting care here. I told her I was done participating in anything that included her fiancé's friends, that I wouldn't be in the same room as the guy who thought my body was a group chat theme. I told her I'd be civil and kind when we crossed paths, but I was done trying to braid our lives back together. She said she understood. The weirdest part is what happened after with our high school friends. I expected the same old dance one night, with them, the next with us. Instead, they called us out kindly. They said they were splitting themselves to keep the peace and it wasn't working. They told both couples that from now on, they were going to invite us to things as a group, and whoever came, came. No advance headcounts, no whisper invites, no editing the guest list to keep someone comfortable. "We're grown-ups," my friend said. "You're all going to have to practice being in rooms together and choosing your behavior." It sounded harsh and sane at the same time. We went to a birthday dinner last weekend. For the first time in months, I laughed without checking who was looking. He wasn't there. She was. We nodded at each other. It was enough. The part of me that wanted a neat ending doesn't get one yet. But I came home from that dinner and finally hung our wedding photo in the hallway. I didn't wince at my arms. I didn't edit the frame in my head. It's just us, on a day no one got to ruin, standing under a stupidly blue sky that looks unreal even though it was. And that's something I can carry. Update 6. 2 Thursdays ago at 2:11 am. My phone lit up with an unknown number and the kind of silence you only get between radiator clicks. A soft voice asked for me by my full name and then said my friend's mother's name like it belonged to me too. Emergency triage. Dizziness. They needed someone with a car and a local ID to sign the initial forms. I looked at my husband and he was already pulling on jeans. We drove through a city that looked rinse, no people, just traffic lights doing their private choreography. In the lights were too awake. They cracked a paper bracelet around her wrist and asked me to spell our last names. When the curtain tugged back and I saw her headscarf slightly askew, I felt this ridiculous urge to fix it and then I did, fingers stupidly careful. She blinked and smiled at me first. Anak, you came fast, she said, like we'd just met for coffee. My friend appeared 20 minutes later with her hair in a knot, and no makeup. She squeezed me once so hard my left shoulder popped. We signed what needed to be signed, answered the nurse's 100 small questions. The monitors were beeping like a baby marching band, annoying but steady enough to keep my breathing normal. At some point, a plastic chair materialized for each of us and we drank vending machine tea that tasted like paper envelopes. My husband fell asleep with his head against the partition bar and looked like a kid in detention. He arrived an hour after that. Her husband. He had that thin, sour smell of a bar just washed from his sweater, like citrus over something else. He smiled too much and too loud. He said, "Traffic," and then looked at my phone on the table and went quiet when the screensaver kicked in and he saw my husband's wallpaper, us at the beach, basic joy. I watched my friend's mouth go into a line I recognized from that park feel. She didn't make a scene. She just said, "Sit," and then started answering the residents' questions with a kind of tight politeness that means you're filing things away. At dawn, when we finally got bumped from the curtain to a small oncology ward for observation, he volunteered to go get porridge and never came back. He texted an hour later a photo of Kanji and a caption about lines being long. She stared at it like it was in a language she was done trying to decode. By 10, her mom had color again. They adjusted dosage, shocked it up to a bad reaction, kept her for the day. The nurse showed us the little bell mounted by the station, the one they ring when someone finishes a cycle, and told us not to touch it for luck. We nodded like school kids. When they finally let us take her downstairs for air, she reached for my arm first, then my friend's, and we walked her like a queen 3 beats off the parade. Outside, there was a coffee cart that did 2 sweet iced lattes and paper straws that sank into themselves. We bought 3 anyway. The sun found us exactly when she said the thing that made everything feel different. "You take care of her," she told me, not looking at her daughter. "She's always trying to carry both sides of a door." We took her home mid-afternoon. My husband made luga the way my Lola taught me, lots of ginger, white pepper until it smells like a sweater. We ate it on our couch with daytime TV murmuring from someone else's window. The houseplants on our sill looked very serious about their chlorophyll. It was dull and sacred and more than any of the performative coffees we'd faked. He texted around 5, a paragraph about being sorry the lines were long. She texted back okay. Then she put her phone face down on the coffee table and asked if I could sit with her mom the next morning so she could make calls. The next morning is when the other part happened. She came back with eyes that looked rinsed. She said, "We're taking a break. No theatrics. Just facts." Counseling had turned into weekly apologies and 2 hours of him insisting it was all jokes. She told him about the group chat screenshot and he did that thing where he said, "Everyone says things." She told him everyone didn't pick apart his wife's face for sport or call another woman fat for being alive. He packed a weekend bag. He cried. She did, and she moved his plants to the balcony so they wouldn't die. "I'm not asking for your opinion," she said to me, which was funny because my whole body had been bracing to give one. "I just needed you to know for me." I didn't say congratulations and I didn't say I'm sorry. I said, "Do you need me to take your mom to her Friday session?" She nodded like she was swallowing something. We drove her there together. On the ward, a volunteer played the guitar badly and everybody ended up humming anyway. Halfway through the drip, a nurse with glitter gel on her nails leaned over and whispered, "She's scheduled to ring tomorrow." A whole bell schedule. I didn't know that existed. We came back the next day with a little bouquet my husband snagged from a supermarket end cap and a plastic tub of sap and my friend's aunt had dropped off. When the nurse walked her over and handed her the string, she didn't even pretend to be composed. She rang it like she was calling down something. The sound wasn't pretty. It was a tinny clatter that bounced around the tile and landed right under your ribs. Everybody clapped. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her palm and said, "I can't eat anything I want today," and we all nodded solemnly like that was a binding medical order. After, we went to a tiny Filipino place that sells halo in a styrofoam cup and let her pick 3 extra large flan. He says for science. That night, he texted me. The mall guy. A DM request with an apology that had all the right pieces and all the wrong order, my name spelled properly, words like context and I never meant harm and it was a bad joke, nothing about consequence. I hovered over it, and then closed the app. 2 hours later, my husband got a different message from a number that wasn't saved. It was a screenshot of the 100% damage control chat renamed to 100% accountability. The rename was him. My friend's almost ex had taken himself out and posted a goodbye message that, for the first time, didn't do the slippery thing. There were 2 other exits in a row. The mall guy stayed. Someone else, I think the one with the smug comments about our aisle song, typed and then didn't send anything. The screen blinked with ellipses like a heartbeat and then went still. Our high school friends stuck to their grown-up plan. Last weekend, they hosted a pantsit and K-pop night for no reason other than their new lease had decent acoustics. They sent one invite at noon and that was that. We went. She came with her mom, scarf a little crooked and lipstick perfect. The guys were not there. Someone put on a karaoke track and we all butchered Cat Angesip and it was embarrassing and world class. Halfway through, my friend and I ended up washing dishes next to each other, hands and suds, glasses coming clean so fast it felt like a trick. She said, "I don't know what we are right now." I said, "Me neither." A plate slipped and we caught it with the same hand. The entire sink laughed. On my way out, my high school friend pressed something into my palm. A cheap little keychain bell, the kind you'd hang on a bike. "For your hallway," she said, "so you have a sound that's yours when you need it." I clipped it to my house keys and it's silly and bright and makes the smallest chime when I walk. Yesterday I passed our wedding photo on the way to take the trash out and the bell made its tiny noise against my leg. It startled me, just a little, and then I laughed alone in the hallway like an absolute idiot. No one was there to ruin it. It wasn't a neat ending. It was a sound I could carry. Update 7. Last Sunday started with a ceiling drip that thought it was a metronome. 1, 2, 3. Then silence like it had to count again. Our building group chat was chewing its own tail. Burst pipe in the basement. Storage cages flooding. Does anyone know bolt cutters? I was making coffee and watching water fatten the paint bubble above our bookshelf like a blister you're not supposed to pop. My phone lit up with her name. My dress, she wrote, no punctuation, and an address pinned for the back entrance. We were in shoes in under a minute. The keychain bell on my bag made nervous little noises down the stairwell like it was on a tiny roller coaster. The super was on a ferry, naturally. A night shift security guard with a heart tattoo under one eye shrugged and waved us through anyway. The hallway to the cages smelled like hot coins and someone's forgotten gym bag. Water up to our ankles, cold like a dare. We found her padlock and stared at it, like we could reason with a circle of steel. The guard handed me a pair of cutters that looked like they'd been used exactly once to open a dinosaur. It took both hands and a little bit of my whole personality to snap it. Inside, everything had agreed to become a sponge. Cardboard doing its sad collapse. The garment bag was on the floor, half submerged. When she lifted it, the zipper stuttered and then gave, and the dress slumped out like a jellyfish that had heard a bad joke. She held it like it was still sacred. I held my breath like I was. We hauled it upstairs. The elevator smelled like mopped lemon and someone's takeout, and the keychain bell kept chiming with every floor like an elevator operator from the 50s. In our bathroom, we made a ridiculous kind of triage. Towels on every surface. Fans balanced on whatever would hold them. I took the blow dryer and she took another and we stood like that, wrists aching, tall flinching under hot air. The dress was heavier than grief when it was wet. It was lighter than I expected when it started to let go. My husband threaded 2 hangers through loops that weren't designed for hangers and rigged a clothesline situation with parachute cord from a camping kit he has never once used outdoors. We spilled a bowl of clothespins and it sounded like someone had dropped a bag of Skittles on tile. Somewhere in there, our neighbor's cat got in and tried to kill the skirt with his back feet like it had said something about his mother. We bribed him out with half a tin of tuna and my pride. The dye bled the faintest whisper onto our hands and stained my wrists a sad, bridal bruise. She looked at the blue on my skin and we both started laughing, the awful kind that empties you, that you have to bend for. The fire alarm chose that moment to remember theater. It blared like a trumpet section that only knows one note. The building did its slow, cranky evacuation. We went, because you have to, carrying a damp wedding dress like a sick swan. The street was a lineup of pajamas and dogs in sweaters and a man clutching a rice cooker like a baby. A kid with a gap tooth pointed at us and said, "Princess got caught in the rain," very seriously. She did a little bow with her elbows full and the kid cursed he back. Somewhere in the row of faces, a phone came up because of course it did. We stood there with drip marks on our shins and her hair stuck in wet commas around her face, and I swear, for 10 seconds, it felt like we had rewritten something without telling anyone. The firefighters walked past, checked the panel, gave the universal okay hand signal. We went back upstairs and the dress kept giving up water like it was emptying a secret. By noon, it was only damp in the seams. We made sandwiches with too much mayo, because it was the only acceptable ratio. She sat on the closed toilet lid and watched steam rise off the skirt like breath in winter. "I never wore it," she said, not bragging, not mourning. "I thought I might for photos one day. Or just because." She picked up a loose thread and stared at it like a lifeline. "What do I even do with this now?" I said the thing that was both true and not helpful, "Wherever you want." She rolled her eyes at me like high school and then said, "Okay. Help me want something." We pulled the crinoline out and it sounded exactly like ghosts sighing. We spread the tulle on our living room rug like a map we didn't know how to read. I got the sewing kit my Lola sent in a ballot by inbox in 2012, the one with needles zipped into little plastic pockets like they were being incubated. My husband printed out a pattern for a simple pillow, because he cannot not Google a situation. We cut carefully, stupidly careful. Tulle has a way of pretending it's docile until it's not. We made one small square, then another. We filled them with clean cotton and a little bit of lavender from a jar someone gave me because I once said out loud I liked the smell of a bow store. When her mom came by later to check on the prize from the flood, we pressed a pillow into her hands before we showed her the dress. She put it under her arm and patted it like a pet. "For the clinic chair," my friend said. Her mom looked at the seams, at our proud, crooked stitching, and kissed the top corner like it was someone's forehead. She said, "This will boss that chair around." The dress ended up hanging across our hallway like an art installation about letting things drip. We didn't talk about making it smaller or bigger or whiter or not. We let it be a complicated piece of fabric that had done a lap in dirty water and still remembered how to be gentle. He came by at dusk to get his last plant. I recognized his footsteps in the hall before the knock. My husband stood up without me asking and opened the door halfway, a line nobody crossed. He had a box and the wrong smile on. He saw the dress and tried to say something that put him in the good light. She didn't ask him in. She didn't explain about the pipe or my wrists or the kid on the curb who thinks she's a princess. He said, "That looks expensive." She said, "It looked like a mistake," and then swallowed that sentence again so it wouldn't turn into a fight. He nodded like he'd just gotten a haircut he wasn't sure about and left with the plant crooked in the box. After, we took the bell off my keys and tied it to the laundry room doorknob because the draft kept closing it on the dress. It chimed every time someone walked by. Small, sure, insistent. Later that week our high school friends texted a photo of a picnic table covered in yard sale chaos. "Community swap this Saturday," the caption said, 4 emojis in a row that had nothing to do with secondhand clothes and everything to do with trying. We brought a bag of books and a blender that turns ice into patience. She brought a stack of tulle wraps we didn't need, 4 pillows and a box of pastel hair clips I swear every girl owned in 2004. Halfway through, a teenage girl tried on a scrap like a veil. She kept glancing at her reflection in a dark window, tucking, smoothing, doing a face like she was practicing being seen. My friend watched her for exactly 5 seconds and then said, "Keep it," like she was handing over a permission slip. The girl's mom reached for her wallet and my friend shook her head. My bell bumped against my thigh when I got up to throw away paper cups and it made the dumb tiny sound that means very little to anyone else and apparently too much to me. The mall guy never showed. He sent a voice note apology I didn't play and a typed one my friend intercepted with a flat "Don't contact her again." The group chat did quiet theater, 2 more left. Someone changed the photo to a black square like a funeral that forgot what it was grieving. I didn't watch. She moved her plants off the balcony and into a sun that finally acted like it had time for her. Her mom came by with pancit that tasted like sundaes. We ate it on our couch again because apparently that couch is where our lives insist on being honest. We didn't name what we were. We just passed the vinegar and laughed when the cat reappeared and pretended to be dignified about noodles. That night, when we finally took the dress down, it had the most ridiculous faint wave to it, like it had learned an accent it was trying not to show off. She folded it on our table and said she was going to make a few more pillows, maybe a pouch for her mom's meds, maybe a lining for whatever she calls the next good thing. Not closing any doors, she said. Just carrying them better. When she left, I hung the cheap bell back on my keys. It knocked against the light switch and made a sound that didn't belong to any ceremony and also belonged to all of them. On my way to brush my teeth, I looked at our wedding photo. My arms were still my arms. My face was still my face. The dress down the hall was not mine. It still felt like something of mine had come out of the water less heavy. It wasn't an ending. It was a ham we didn't have to hide.